What if some of the most shocking mysteries in human history didn't happen centuries ago, but just 60 years back? In the 1960s, trained pilots saw impossible objects in the sky, radios picked up voices from nowhere, and people vanished without leaving even a shadow behind. The evidence still exists. The witnesses never changed their stories. And yet, the truth remains just out of reach. Because in the 1960s something was happening. And the proof is still out there. Part 1. In the shadowy decade of the 1960s, the world lived with its heart pounding almost every single day. Sirens were tested weekly, school children practiced duck and cover drills, and the word nuclear hovered in conversations like a silent ghost. The Cold War wasn't just a political struggle. It was a psychological one. Governments watched each other closely, skies were constantly scanned, and secrecy became a way of life. It was during this tense and paranoid era that the first whispers of the unexplainable began to surface, not from dreamers or conspiracy theorists, but from trained professionals who were trusted with the safety of nations. Late one night in 1962, an Air Force pilot flying over the Pacific radioed back to base with a trembling voice. He wasn't panicking, but there was something unmistakable in his tone, confusion mixed with fear. He reported a glowing object pacing his jet with impossible precision. It wasn't a star. It wasn't another aircraft. And when he tried to adjust his speed, the object responded instantly, as if it could read his thoughts. Moments later, it shot straight upward and vanished. The radar logs confirmed something was there, but no known technology could explain its movement. Stories like this began stacking up quietly at first, locked away in classified files and whispered in military halls. Pilots spoke only to superiors, radar operators filed reports they knew would be questioned, and scientists tried to stay grounded in logic. But logic was beginning to crack. In small towns across America, families reported strange lights hovering silently above cornfields and forests. There was no engine noise, no exhaust, just an eerie glow and a feeling. Many described it as being watched. One farmer in Ohio later recalled standing frozen in his backyard as a disc-shaped craft hovered above his barn. "It wasn't scary at first," he said years later. His voice steady but haunted. "It felt curious, like it was studying us." His crops were found flattened the next morning in perfect circular patterns, something no storm could have caused. Officials dismissed it as weather damage, but locals knew better. They had seen the sky that night. It was come. Meanwhile, scientists were pushing boundaries at an unprecedented rate. Rockets pierced the upper atmosphere, satellites circled the Earth, and humanity dared to dream of the moon. Yet with every leap forward, new anomalies appeared. Instruments malfunctioned during key experiments. Signals arrived that didn't match any known cosmic pattern. Engineers double-checked calculations and recalibrated machines, but the strange data persisted. Some researchers began quietly asking a question they dared not voice publicly. What if we weren't alone? Government agencies collected evidence relentlessly. Photographs, audio recordings, eyewitness testimonies. Everything was catalogued, stamped, and filed. But when journalists asked for answers, officials offered calm smiles and practiced denials. "There is no threat," they said. "There is no cause for concern." Still, the files kept growing, and the incidents refused to stop. By the mid-1960s, something had clearly shifted. The world felt watched, not just by rival nations, but by something unknown. The skies no longer felt empty. And deep down, many people sensed it, the feeling that history was unfolding quietly, just beyond the headlines, where truth was buried under layers of secrecy. Part 2. As the decade marched on, the mysteries of the 1960s grew darker and more personal. It wasn't just lights in the sky anymore. People began disappearing. Ordinary people with routines, families, and plans for the future, gone without warning or explanation. One of the most unsettling cases occurred in 1966, when a college student driving home after a late-night study session vanished along a well-lit highway. His car was found parked neatly on the shoulder, Engine cold, keys still in the ignition. There were no skid marks, no signs of struggle, no footprints leading away from the road. State police searched for weeks. Helicopters scanned forests, volunteers combed fields, and psychics were even consulted in desperation. Nothing. Years later, a former officer admitted, "It was like he stepped out of reality." Similar cases surfaced across different states, all sharing the same haunting pattern: normal moments followed by complete erasure. At the same time, radio astronomers were tuning into space, listening for natural cosmic noise. What they found instead raised eyebrows and quiet alarms. In several observatories, technicians detected repeating signals that didn't match pulsars or known celestial phenomena. The signals had rhythm, structure. One scientist joked nervously, "If this is interference, it's the most intelligent interference I've ever seen." The joke didn't last long. Higher authorities stepped in, and certain research logs were sealed. Rumors began circulating among researchers that some discoveries were being intentionally buried. Not destroyed, just hidden. A young engineer working on satellite telemetry later recalled being told to forget what you saw, after discovering unexplained data spikes that coincided with reported UFO sightings. "They didn't threaten me," he said. "They didn't have to. The message was clear. This was bigger than me." Public fear simmered beneath the surface. Newspapers ran occasional stories, usually framed with humor or skepticism, but people talked among themselves. At diners, gas stations, and kitchen tables, the same questions were whispered. Why were so many sightings reported by credible witnesses? Why did the government always respond the same way? And why did these events seem to be increasing, not fading? One night in Michigan, hundreds of residents reported glowing orbs drifting silently across the sky. Police lines were flooded with calls. Even local officials witnessed the phenomenon. When questioned, a government consultant famously explained it away as swamp gas. The explanation became a national joke, but no one who saw those lights was laughing. They knew what swamp gas looked like. This wasn't it. Behind closed doors, officials were divided. Some believed the phenomena were advanced foreign technology. Others feared something far stranger. But no theory could explain everything. Objects that outperformed jets. Beings reportedly seen near landing sites. Humans vanishing without a trace. The puzzle pieces refused to fit neatly. And so the decade pressed forward, carrying its secrets like a loaded weapon. People sensed that history was watching them back, silently, patiently. Whatever was happening in the 1960s wasn't random. It had patterns, intent, and perhaps purpose. Part 3. By the late 1960s, tension had become a constant companion, woven into everyday life. The Vietnam War filled television screens, protests filled streets, and trust in authority slowly eroded. Against this backdrop, reports of unexplained phenomena took on a new weight. People were no longer willing to accept simple dismissals. They wanted answers, and some believed the truth was being deliberately withheld. One retired Navy radar technician finally spoke out decades later, describing nights when multiple unknown objects appeared on radar screens, moving faster than anything known to man. "We tracked them," he said. "They were real. And we were ordered to erase the data." His voice cracked when he admitted the fear wasn't just of the objects themselves, but of how little control humans had in those moments. Meanwhile, strange encounters weren't limited to the skies. In rural areas, individuals claimed close encounters with unknown beings. These weren't fantastical monsters, but quiet, unsettling figures described with eerie consistency. Short, pale, large-eyed. Skeptics laughed, but psychologists noticed something troubling. Many witnesses showed signs of genuine trauma. Nightmares, memory gaps, anxiety triggered by specific sounds or lights. One woman from Arizona described waking up paralyzed as a bright light filled her bedroom. "I couldn't scream," she recalled. "I couldn't move. And then, I was somewhere else." Medical exams later showed unexplained marks on her body. Doctors couldn't explain them. Neither could she. Scientists tried desperately to maintain rational ground. Hypotheses ranged from mass hysteria to experimental aircraft to misidentified natural phenomena. But none of these explanations could cover the full scope of events. The sheer volume, consistency, and global spread of incidents pointed to something more complex. Government secrecy only fueled suspicion. Files were classified for decades. Whistleblowers were silenced or discredited. When official investigations were finally released, large portions were blacked out. The message was clear. The public wasn't ready or wasn't meant to know everything. Yet the proof remained. Photos that defied easy explanation. Audio recordings with unknown frequencies. Testimonies that never changed, even under ridicule. The evidence didn't scream the truth. It whispered it, patiently waiting for someone to listen. By the end of the decade, humanity stood at a crossroads. We had reached for the moon, but perhaps something else had already reached us. And as the 1960s closed its doors, it left behind a chilling question that still echoes today. What did we almost discover? And why were we stopped? Part 4. Time moved on, but the mysteries of the 1960s refused to fade. As years passed, witnesses aged, documents surfaced, and technology improved. Old photographs were reanalyzed with modern tools. Audio recordings were enhanced. Radar data was re-examined. And again, experts reached the same unsettling conclusion. Some of these events were real, measurable, and still unexplained. Former officials began to speak carefully, choosing words like anomalies and unknown craft. One intelligence analyst admitted, "We didn't say aliens. We said unknowns." But unknown didn't mean impossible. The truth, it seemed, was trapped between fear and denial. What made these phenomena so disturbing wasn't just what they were, but what they implied. That humanity might not be the most advanced intelligence observing this planet. That our understanding of physics might be incomplete. That history itself might have unseen chapters. People who lived through the 1960s often say there was a feeling in the air, a sense that something enormous was unfolding just beyond perception. Not violent, not friendly, just present, watching, waiting. And maybe that's why the mysteries still matter today. Because the evidence didn't disappear. It waited. Part 5. Today, when we look back at the unsolved phenomena of the 1960s, we're not just examining history, we're confronting ourselves. Our fear of the unknown. Our need for certainty. Our willingness to believe only what feels safe. The witnesses are still there. The records still exist. And the questions remain unanswered. Were these events natural anomalies? Secret human technology? Or proof that we were never as alone as we thought? Perhaps the truth isn't hidden because it doesn't exist, but because we weren't ready to face it. And maybe we still aren't. Because even now, as we search the skies and listen to the stars, one thing is clear. The proof is still out there. Final part. As the 1960s quietly slipped into history, the world tried to move on. New decades brought new fears, new technologies, and new distractions. But the mysteries born in that shadowy era never truly disappeared. They lingered in classified files, in the memories of witnesses, and in the unanswered questions that refused to stay buried. For those who lived through it, the feeling never faded, the sense that something extraordinary had brushed against humanity and then stepped back into the darkness. Years later, when governments slowly began declassifying documents, the public finally saw fragments of what had been hidden. Not explanations, not confessions, just confirmation that the events were real. Radar contacts with no known origin. Objects that defied the laws of physics as we understand them. Investigations that ended not with solutions, but with shrugs and sealed folders. To many, this was more disturbing than denial. Because it meant the truth wasn't a lie. It was simply unknown. Some witnesses, now elderly, chose to speak before time erased their voices forever. Former pilots described encounters that still haunted their dreams. Scientists admitted that certain data points had no earthly explanation. A retired intelligence officer once said quietly in an interview, "The scariest conclusion wasn't that we were being visited. It was that we didn't know who was in control." His words never made headlines, but they echoed deeply with those who heard them. Skeptics argue that every mystery will eventually have a logical answer. And perhaps they are right. History has shown that science often catches up to the impossible. But even skeptics admit there are cases from the 1960s that remain stubbornly resistant to explanation. Too many credible witnesses. Too much corroborating evidence. Too many loose ends that don't tie together neatly. What makes these phenomena so powerful is not just the question of what happened, but what it says about us. We want certainty. We want clean answers. We want the universe to make sense. The events of the 1960s challenged that comfort. They suggested that reality might be larger, stranger, and more complex than our systems and beliefs can contain. Maybe the truth isn't hidden in a secret vault or locked behind government clearance. Maybe it's hidden in plain sight, waiting for the moment when humanity is ready to accept it. Ready to admit that not everything revolves around us. Ready to understand that knowledge doesn't always bring control. Sometimes it brings humility. Even today, people still look up at the night sky with the same mix of wonder and unease felt decades ago. Modern technology has improved, but the questions remain eerily familiar. Unidentified objects, unexplained signals, encounters that leave no clear answers behind. The story didn't end in the 1960s. That was only one chapter. And so, as we reflect on those unsolved phenomena, one truth stands firm. The witnesses were real. The evidence was real. And the mysteries were never fully solved. Whether these events were warnings, observations, or mere coincidences, they left an undeniable mark on human history. Because somewhere between the stars and our own fear of the unknown, the truth still waits. And the proof is still out there. True. And that's what makes the unsolved phenomena of the 1960s so unsettling, even after all these years. The world changed, technology advanced, and generations passed, but the questions never truly went away. The evidence still exists, the witnesses still stand by their stories, and the mysteries remain locked between what we know and what we're not ready to understand. If these events were nothing more than misunderstandings, why do they still defy explanation? And if they were something more, why does the truth feel just one step beyond our reach? Maybe the answers aren't meant to be handed to us all at once. Maybe they're meant to be questioned, explored, and slowly uncovered. So the next time you look up at the night sky, remember, history has already shown us that not everything in this universe wants to be understood. Some truths wait patiently, watching as we search for them. Because the mystery isn't over. And the proof is still out there.